11 plants that you can start from seed before your last frost date. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and I discuss everything gardening so that you can become a better gardener. Today I'll be discussing those plants that you can start before your last frost date. Did I say 11? Well, later in the video I'll give you a bonus. There's actually 12. The 11 plants I'm discussing today I refer to as cool season plants. You might know them as cold weather plants or cold hardy plants. These are plants that we grow in our vegetable garden that can handle very cold conditions, temperatures at or below freezing. And though I'm 7 weeks away from my last frost date, now's the time that I can start putting some of these seeds in the ground. In fact, I might actually get a harvest or two before I ever reach that last frost date. And you want to grow these cool season plants when it's cool out, because after the last frost date, when it's hot, these plants don't do so well. I want to point out right at the beginning that one of the reasons I can sow these seeds so early is because I'm using some protection. This plastic over hoops will gain me an extra 2 to 3 weeks advantage to start these seeds. And are you ready for the list of these 11 plants? Well, here they are. We're talking about beets, cabbage, carrots, and Swiss chard, lettuce, parsnips, peas, and radishes, and rutabagas, spinach, and turnips. These are all cool season plants that can handle some serious cold weather. But while all of these plants can handle some cold weather, some prefer to be sown a little bit closer to the last frost date. For example, beets, Swiss chard, parsnips, and turnips are best sown 2 to 4 weeks before the last frost date. If you add on 2 to 3 weeks for covering with plastic, now you realize that you can start these seeds up to 4 to 7 weeks before the last frost date. Carrots can be sown about 3 to 5 weeks before the last frost date. And all the rest, well, they can easily handle conditions 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost date. And that's outside with no cover at all. If you put the plastic cover over these seeds, you might be able to start them up to 9 weeks before your last frost date. It's important to discuss why we have this range of time. Why carrots are from 3 to 5 weeks of sowing before the last frost date. Well, it depends on your particular garden, your climate, and your weather patterns. If you live in an area where spring gradually turns into summer, then you might be able to get away with planting earlier because the nighttime and the daytime temperatures will be gradually climbing. But in an area like mine with a roller coaster of temperatures, I need to plant a little bit closer to the last frost date because the assumption is that I'm going to have severe temperature changes a little further out. And that's very true. Today, it's supposed to reach about 65 degrees Fahrenheit for a high, and the low overnight will be about 38 degrees. Perfectly fine for all of these plants. But in 2 days, the high temperature is only going to be 42 degrees, and the low is going to drop down to 24 overnight, which is a little too cold for most of these seeds. And that's one of the reasons why I have plastic over my beds. Plastic over hoops in a fully enclosed situation like this should give me at least 3 extra degrees of warmth. Here's how it works. During the day, the sun is heating up this bed, the soil within and the air. At night, with the plastic over it, that warm air has nowhere to go, and so the soil stays warmer longer. And the air within this covered bed should be about 3 degrees warmer. In a couple days, when it's supposed to get down to 24 degrees, this bed will be at 27 degrees, which is an okay temperature for these seeds. I'm also concerned about the soil temperature, which is why I have plastic over these beds before I'm even sowing the seeds. You shouldn't sow even cool season seeds when the ground is still frozen. So I put this plastic in place a few days ago to get that warming effect, so that the soil inside these beds is warmer than the soil outside these beds. Some of these seeds can actually germinate in very cold conditions. The spinach, for example, can germinate when the soil temperature is 34 degrees, but it takes quite a while for those seeds to germinate. They'll germinate much better when the soil temperature is 45 degrees. And if I can get the soil temperature up to 50 to 60 degrees, well, then these seeds should germinate in no time at all. So I will be starting some of these seeds today under plastic, even though it's 7 weeks out. But I won't be sowing any of the seeds in these open beds, because if you remember some of those numbers, I can do it up to 6 weeks before that last frost date. At the 7-week point, and because my weather is so variable, there's no guarantee that the seedlings that emerge will be able to survive through any harsh conditions that arise. But I'm actually okay with that, because while I'm starting some of these seeds today under plastic, in about 2 to 3 weeks I'll be starting some of the same seeds in these open beds. And that will give me a greatly extended harvest period. I'll be harvesting these first plants for a couple weeks, and then these other plants will be ready to harvest. So instead of getting everything all at once, it's spread out over a much longer period of time. I want to give you a bonus for sticking with me this far into the video, and that's a 12th plant that you can start from seed well before your last frost date. It's the hardiest of all, kale. Kale can be started from seed outside 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. In fact, I'm actually planning on starting some kale from seed today in one of these beds. You're probably not surprised if you've grown kale before that it can last throughout the winter. As long as it's not too cold, it can survive underneath snow and ice for many months. So if you're looking for a plant that gives you an extra early start in your garden, consider starting some kale seeds. There are many advantages besides just getting an early start to your garden by planting some of these seeds. Some of them, particularly when you start early underneath plastic, might be able to give you a complete harvest well before you even get to the point where you're thinking about putting in tomato and squash and melons and all those warm season plants. So, for instance, we're putting radishes and lettuce and spinach in one of these beds, but we can harvest everything and then use the same bed to do our peppers and tomatoes. At the end of the season, you do the same thing. After the tomatoes and peppers are done, you put these seeds back in. And I'll have another video at the end of the season that shows you how to do that. And look for a separate video where I show you how I sow these seeds, the spacing, and how I use the protection. If you have any questions, please let me know below. If you like this video, be sure and give it a thumbs up and share it. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.